Thank you. I'm so honored to have your support, and I just want to thank you publicly, and I hope I do often enough privately. But Pat has been, as a supervisor, an extraordinary leader, obviously here, but really a voice in particular about one of the issues that I think is something we are definitely not talking enough about on the national stage, which is affordable housing. And you have been doing that work that is a role of leadership, and I just want you to keep doing it, and I look forward to being your partner on it. In particular, there's some work that I'm doing around saying that any family that is paying more than 30% of your income in rent plus utilities get a tax credit, but this is such a big issue. You've been such a leader. So please, can you applaud and thank Pat? So it's great to be back. How is everyone? It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. And I know that our students should probably be studying right now, so thank you guys and everyone for taking the time to be here this afternoon. So I will share with you some of my thoughts and observations and a couple of my ideas about how we fix some things. And then I'm here to listen as much as I am to talk. So then we're going to pass around microphones so I can hear from you. But it is great to be back in Iowa City. Thank you. Thank you. So let's just kind of level set. It's just, these are crazy times. These are crazy times. You know, it's so funny. I have a friend who says to me, Kamala, you know, every time you get interviewed, especially like when I'm in DC and I'm walking through the halls of the Senate, and I'll get interviewed about the thing of the day, whatever that is, and I just seem to always use some version of the word troubled. It's troubling, I'm troubled, troublesome. And then my friend said to me, Kamala, why don't you just tell them what you tell us? It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. So there we are. We just got that out of the way. It's a hot mess. Yes, indeed. And these have been days that are, you know, requiring us to ask, are we going to be okay? What does this all mean? Can we survive this? These are days where we've been throwing things at that inanimate object called a TV. You know, going through individual and group therapy about it all. These are troubling days. And so this is a time then that is requiring us to be prepared to fight for our democracy, to fight for our system of justice, to fight for the rule of law, to fight for this country we love. And I just want to remind us then that there is nothing that we have achieved as a nation that was about progress, be it civil rights, be it social justice. There is nothing that we have achieved that has been progress that came without a fight. We are up for a fight. We like a good fight. We were born as a nation out of a fight. For equality, a fight for justice, a fight for fairness, a fight for liberties. And this is that moment in time where we must fight then. And we're up for it. And I'll tell you, I was born a daughter of fighters. My parents were active in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. My sister and I, we joke, we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full-time marching and shouting about justice. And in fact, the heroes among the many of that time were the lawyers, people like Thurgood Marshall, who understood the power of the skill of the profession of law to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country. And the ability then to do the important work of reminding people of that great promise we articulated in 1776, that we are all equal and should be treated that way. In fact, that's why I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. They were my heroes. And I went to law school, and then I graduated law school, and my family gathered around. My mother asked me, well, Kamala, so what are you going to do in your fight for justice? And I told her I decided I was going to be a prosecutor. Because I said, you know, I want to be in a place where I can be a voice for the most voiceless and vulnerable. And also knowing the injustices in the criminal justice system. I also want to be in a place where I can then have the ability and the authority to reform that which must be reformed. And so I started my career as a prosecutor in the Alameda County DA's office in California, which is an office that Earl Warren once ran. So it has a reputation for being, to having a long tradition. And I'll never forget, from the first day that I walked into the courtroom, and for many, many years, I stood in that courtroom and I said, Kamala Harris, for the people. And this phrase, for the people, really does capture the spirit of our system of justice. Because when I said for the people, it meant two things in particular. One, that a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. Two, for the people means all the people, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of the party with which you're registered to vote, regardless of where you live in that zip code, regardless of the language your grandmother speaks. It's about all the people. All the people. And so it was in the name of the people that I, for the large part of my career before I was elected DA, that I stood in that courtroom fighting for victims of child sexual assault and domestic violence and human trafficking. Because they deserve to have a voice that represented their strength and their righteous need to be recognized with dignity and without judgment. For the people, when I was the elected district attorney, as the first woman of color elected district attorney in a state of 40 million people, it meant creating an initiative that was one of the first in the country that focused on young men in particular who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. Why? Because we needed to reform the system and recognize that it was a failed war on drugs that led to the mass incarceration in America, which has been so unjust in so many ways. For the people, when I was elected Attorney General of California and ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice, meant fighting the big banks of the United States. Because you see, they had engaged in predatory lending practices. And then robo-signed foreclosures. So hard-working families lost their homes. And why was that important? Because we need to stand up to the most powerful, especially when they are profiting on the backs of hard-working families. And so I stand before you today for the people, as a candidate for President of the United States, and for the people, intending and fully intending to relinquish Donald Trump of the office of the President of the United States. For the people. For the people. And that's why I'm running. And that's why I'm running. And I'm running because I believe in 2020, justice is on the ballot. Justice is on the ballot. Justice is on the ballot when in America today, the family that owns Walmart makes more in 60 seconds than the average American family makes in a whole year. Justice is on the ballot when almost half of American families cannot afford a $400 unexpected expense, when over half of American families will go bankrupt because of a $500 medical bill. Justice is on the ballot when we are looking at the fact that in 99% of the counties in the United States, if you're a minimum wage worker working full-time, you can't afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. Justice is on the ballot when in states around this country, including this state, have out-of-touch legislators who dare to impede on a woman's access to reproductive health care and making decisions about her own body. Justice is on the ballot when we are still, after passing the Equal Pay Act in 1963, still paying women 80 cents on the dollar, black women 61 cents, Native American women 58 cents, and Latinas 53 cents on the dollar for equal work. Justice is on the ballot. Justice is on the ballot the fact that within the next 12 years, if we don't take immediate and swift action to save this planet, this God-given planet, the harm that we are creating and that those big oil companies have been responsible for will be irreversible, and therefore we must take immediate action. Justice is on the ballot. And justice is on the ballot when we have a criminal occupying the White House. Because, basically the way that I think about it is, Donald Trump is a walking indictment on a red tie. Justice is on the ballot. It truly is in 2020. And so that's why I'm running. And I will also say this. Let's talk for a moment about the current occupant of the White House. Because it's important to put this all in context. He came in on a campaign that was about talking about making America great again, which for most of us required a question again exactly from whom. And for all of us made clear he was talking about going back to something, right? Back to what we then asked, back before the Voting Rights Act, back before the Civil Rights Act, back before federal minimum wage, back before Roe v. Wade, back before the Fair Housing Act. Because we're not going back. We're not going back. And then, we're not. We will not. And the thing about it is also, and this is why I say to the pundits who, and I just would like to advise everybody from time to time, find a way to turn off cable news, just for the sake of the collective mental health. But the pundits will then talk about a lot about comparing 2020 to 2016. 2020 will not be 2016. Thank you. 2020 will not be 2016. And part of the reason I say that is because we all know there is now a whole lot of evidence to prove the fact that he sold people out. He sold people out. He sold out working people. Because he came in making all kinds of promises. He said to working people, everyone from farmers to auto workers, he said, I got you. I see you. I'll take care of you. And then what do? Comes in office, passes a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America. To the point that 60 of the corporations, the biggest in the United States, paid no taxes last year. Who here paid no taxes last year? Sold out working people. Farmers. Said, I'm hanging out with you, I got you, I see you. And then engages in a trade policy by tweet based on unilateral action born out of a fragile ego, which has resulted in farmers here in Iowa and many other places looking at bankruptcy because, as we all know, they worked hard to build up a market to sell soybeans to China over at least a decade. That market has now been cut off. They've got soybeans rotting in bins. We're looking at the fact that because of these tariffs, over 300,000 jobs have already been lost. American families are spending $1,000 more on everything from clothes to washing machines. I call it the Trump trade tax. Sold people out. Sold out our values with policies that have been about putting babies in cages and separating children from their parents in the name of border security, when in fact it is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. Sold out our values, fanning the flames of hate and xenophobia. After the massacre in El Paso, people asked me, the press asked me, well, do you think he's responsible for what happened? I said, well, no, of course he didn't pull the trigger. But he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition. Sold out our values. Sold out our country. Because let us remember, the President of the United States is also the Commander-in-Chief. And the Commander-in-Chief of the United States has as one of her highest priorities the inability to concern herself with the safety and security of our nation and homeland. But what have we seen in Donald Trump? We have seen someone who, on the subject of the fact of Russia's interference in the election of the President of the United States, someone who prefers to take the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community. On the subject of an American student who was tortured and later died, prefers to take the word of a North Korean dictator over the word of the American intelligence community. On the subject of a journalist who was assassinated, a journalist who had American credentials, prefers to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community. We need a new commander-in-chief. So these are the realities of where we are. And I think everyone is here because we know that it is time to turn the page. And yes, we need someone on that debate stage who has the ability to successfully prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump. And I believe it will take a prosecutor to do it. But we also have to agree that there is something that has also happened in these last couple of years, which has caused so many Americans to frankly be exhausted. And you know, when we've had such powerful forces that use the microphone, and when in the hands of the President of the United States, it's probably the most powerful tool that one can have, and has been using it in a way that has been about trying to sow hate and division among us, has been using it in a way that has been about trying to get us to point fingers at each other and work against each other and turn on each other. What we know that is before us then is not only, yes, we must turn the page, but we also must be prepared to write the next chapter based on an America we believe in, knowing that part of how we get there is we need to heal. And we also need someone on that stage who has the ability to unify not only our party, but our country, knowing in our hearts and in our souls and having faith to understand that in spite of what might be one's race, gender, wherever you live geographically, whatever you're registered to, whoever you voted for in the last election, whatever language your grandmother speaks, we need someone on that stage who understands in her heart and in her core what I know to be true, having lived in many places and in many cultures, which is that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And we have got to approach this election with that in our hearts as we are prepared to fight. And we must understand then that when we need to face the challenges before us, the American people know it to be true, but we are going to have to remind us and fight for that. And so I think about then, the America that we believe in and that we need to fight for. I think about that dad who, all around America tonight, wherever he lives, is sitting at that kitchen table at midnight after everyone has gone to sleep, trying to figure out how he's going to get through the end of the month. When he knows that he's one of those families that can't get through the end of the month if he's got a $400 unexpected expense, which is why part of what we're proposing is what has been described as what will be the most significant middle-class tax cut we've had in generations. And specifically what I'm saying is that for families that make less than $100,000 a year, you get a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year that you can take home at up to $500 a month, which will make all the difference between families being able to get through the end of the month with dignity or not. And when I rolled out my plan, I'll tell you, all the naysayers, they said, well, how are you going to pay for that? That's what I heard. Well, I will tell you how we're going to pay for that. On day one, we're going to repeal that tax bill benefiting the top 1%. think about that mom who, somewhere in America tonight, is calling 911 because her child has a fever that is out of control. At which point she's told, take the child to the emergency room. So she packs up that child and maybe the other kids in the back seat and drives to the hospital. And she's sitting in the parking lot, stalled, looking at those sliding glass doors and hesitating to walk through those sliding glass doors because she knows if she does, she, even though she has insurance, is going to be out of pocket a $1,000 to a $5,000 deductible. Which is why I have a Medicare for All plan that says that we are going to bring down costs. Everyone will be covered, including people with pre-existing conditions. We will extend the coverage of Medicare to include vision and dental and hearing aids. And we will get rid of co-pays and deductibles. And now here are a couple of points of distinction between my Medicare for All plan and those of my friends on the debate stage. One, we're not going to raise middle class tax cuts, or taxes. And two, thank you. And two, thanks Dad. And two, we're not going to take away your choice. Because here's the thing, I heard from a lot of people who said, Kamala, you know, I like the fact that you want Medicare for all, I want everybody to be covered, but don't take away my choice between having a private plan or a public plan. And so in my Medicare for all plan, and this is a big point of distinction, I'm not taking away your choice. You get to choose whether you get a private plan or a public plan. In the America we believe in, we're going to address one of the biggest issues that is affecting our children and our babies, who could care less who we voted for in the last election. Could care less. And it has to do with what's been happening when our babies, and you know, I was raised to understand that the children of a community are children of the community. So what we know is over the last couple of months, our children, elementary, middle, and high school students, have been going to school to have a drill where they are being taught about how they need to hide in a closet in the event there is a masked shooter roaming the hallways of their school. It is terrifying and traumatizing our children. And when they come home, they are asking us, why did we have to have that drill? And of course the response is, because there are supposed leaders in Washington, D.C. who have failed to have the courage to reject a false choice which suggests you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away, who have failed to have the courage to agree, fine if you want to go hunting, but we need reasonable gun safety laws in this country, including universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapons ban. And so in the America we believe in, we're going to have the courage to do it, and with your help, I'm here to ask for your support. I hope you will caucus in Kamala's corner. After getting elected, we'll give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together on this. And if they don't, and this is a point of distinction, I've been criticized by some of my opponents on this, because I'm done with the issue. If they don't put a bill on my desk for signature, I am prepared to take executive action to put in place a comprehensive background check requirement and to ban the importation of assault weapons into our country. It is time for action. It is time for action. And then the final point that I'll make, and then I'm going to pass around this microphone because I want to hear from everybody, is you know, I've been in the campaign now, I think, almost 10 months, and I'm at this point where it's just like real talk, you know, I don't want to waste your time. Nobody wants their time to be wasted. And so I want to talk about a subject that has come up during the course of the campaign that has been, a lot of it has been toward my campaign, and it's this conversation about electability. Electability, and I see heads nodding, right? And so the conversation goes something like this. I don't know if America is ready to elect a woman, much less a woman of color, to be president of the United States. Like, I'm ready, but I just don't know if my neighbor's ready. right? You know, maybe it's not your turn. Maybe it's not your time. Oh, that'll be really difficult. And so I just want to say this. This is not a new conversation for me. In fact, I have heard this conversation in every campaign I have, and now here's the operative word, won. And I share this with you not to say anything about myself, but to say everything about you. And in particular, Iowa. Because you have the ability to see what is possible even when others can't see it. You have proven that. You have the ability to believe and have faith in what can be, even if it has never existed. And I believe this is that moment where we cannot sit back and wait for someone's permission to tell us what is possible. And I'll just share with you a little story about my experience in Iowa on this point. So I was here in 2007, in the week between Christmas and New Year's, campaigning for a United States Senator by the name of Barack Obama. And you know, it was cold for this Californian, but I was here. You know, and no job too small or too big, as you all know, working on campaigns, deliver pizzas, yes, whatever needs to be happening, I'll do it. And it was the night before the caucuses. And I was in Des Moines, and I went and I said, anything else to be done? And they said, Kamala, you know, there's this one senior center, a residential home for African-American seniors that nobody's gone to yet. Can you go? And I said, of course I'll go. So I went, and I'm knocking on doors, and you know, invariably there was a lady who would answer the door and say, you know, oh baby, come on in, are you hungry? You look a little skinny, you know. And then I got to this one door, and the lady opened the door with the chain on the door. Petite, just, it couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall. Well into her 80s, for sure. Perfectly coiffed wig. Perfect makeup. This elegant, like, suit. Now, she wasn't expecting anybody. And so I start talking to her, and I'm all excited, and I said, I'm here for Barack Obama. The caucuses are tomorrow. Are you going to come? Will you join us? And she looked at me with a straight face and said, they're not gonna let him win. At which point, I looked at what was in front of me, which is this lady in her at least 85 years of life, and what she had witnessed and endured in terms of injustice, in terms of indignities. And she was holding on to her dignity. And at this stage of her life, she was not about to expose herself to another disappointment. And so, me being me, I said to myself, well, I'm not leaving here, you know. I put down my purse and I just continued to talk with her, and she talked with me. She opened the door a little bit more. She never took that chain off that door, however. And guess who showed up at the caucuses the next night? And guess who won? So I know the challenge before us. I am clear-eyed about it. I am clear-eyed that what we are asking is for everyone to believe in something right now and to know it is possible. And really it is about believing, you know, believing and knowing and having faith that we can have an America where everyone has health care without regard to how much money they have in their back pocket. That we believe in an America where our children can go to school and not fear gun violence. That we believe in an America where we can take on this climate crisis and engage everyone from our students to our farmers, and also make sure that the big oil companies pay the price for their pollution. We believe in an America where so much is possible around what we can do to be true to our promise and our ideals, that we believe in an America where we get back to a place where we agree that when we greet a perfect stranger in their face, we see a neighbor. We believe in this. And on the basis of that belief and that faith, I know we will win. And so I thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you very much.